Have you ever felt confused and frozen, wondering, why am I not over this? Was it really that bad? Only to be told by the one or the ones who hurt you, stop being petty. Don't let your pain get in the way of this relationship. You're being childish. You're too sensitive. Or even just not saying anything at all, not acknowledging anything, non-verbally, and then picking up where things left off, pretending like nothing happened, when you know in your body something big and extreme did happen and you're still feeling hurt. All of these are forms of gaslighting, these comments and the unspoken gaslighting communication. And the goal is to get you to abandon your reality and adopt their reality, that they are superior and you are wrong and they are right. The goal is to get you to fawn and even apologize for being abused. Hi, I'm Amanda, and I am a licensed mental health clinician and a certified narcissistic abuse clinician. And my goal today is to help you to gain clarity and grounding by having knowledge of the definitions of some different forms of abuse and how they're similar and different, as well as some common, universal responses, the actual impact of these things that is pretty generalizable. It's universal, normal, so that you can feel validated in your experience and know that you're not the only one and you're not alone. Let's play a pattern game. See if you can figure out what comes next. First, we have a 5-pound plate. Then we've got a dumbbell. Then we've got a 2.5-pound plate. Then a kettlebell. What comes next? We don't know. We've only seen these things once. We don't know what to expect. What comes next? 5-pound plate. Dumbbell. 2.5-pound plate. What does it end on? And what this represents is the cycle of narcissistic abuse, where we begin with idolization and love bombing. We move to devaluation, then to discard, and of course, we finish with hoovering. No, we don't finish. Well, hopefully we do. You can leave, but if you don't, guess what comes next? Idolization, love bombing, devaluation again, discard, and hoover. Today we're focusing on emotional and psychological abuse because it's not as noticeable and you can't test for it in the same kind of way that you can observe bruises and cuts or test for evidence of sexual abuse. So we're focusing on emotional and psychological abuse. Here are 4 different kinds and a little bit beyond. All right, so the first type we're focusing on, we're just talking about emotional and psychological abuse. This can include yelling, manipulation, belittling, name-calling, swearing. It's reckless. It's got poor coping involved. There can be lying, there can be a pattern for sure, and you can get PTSD from it. But the difference here is going to be that it's not so calculated as narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse is different because it is intentional. We've got exploitation of people, using people. Even if you're not the one being abused, you're going to be getting lied to. You're going to be getting used to isolate whoever the target is who is getting abused. Of course, in narcissistic abuse, we're always going to have gaslighting, tantruming, victim sulking, constant emotional blackmail, constant lying, intentionally kept hidden. So the narcissist uses a guise as a victim, a martyr, or a hero to justify and excuse what they're actually doing, being abused. They're different in public than they are in private. That keeps it hidden too, and it isolates the target because nobody believes them. It just doesn't seem plausible. There's no accountability. It is tactical. It is deliberate. And when you try to get accountability or repair, there's blame shifting and DARVO use. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. You can't get anywhere. The thing with emotional and psychological abuse is if somebody is like that, but they're not narcissistic, sometimes they can learn more coping, and they're willing and open for that. And they will take accountability, and they will show empathy when you be vulnerable with your emotions. Up next, we've got family scapegoating abuse. What this is when the whole family is against one family member. and it's required for inclusion. So if the scapegoat wants to be part of the family, they have to accept the abuse. Family and abuse is a package deal. They get isolated, there's emotional coercion. Behind the back, ill-speaking, slander, indisputable despite evidence. So, when someone's being scapegoated, the group and the family can say whatever they want about the person. It doesn't have to be true. It can be against facts and research, but it's indisputable. We just all act like it's fact. Everyone blames the scapegoat for anything that they dislike, regardless of the true cause. There's excessive shame and negativity. The scapegoat is discredited, defamed, and portrayed as dishonest. It silences the scapegoat. No one wants to hear from someone they have no faith in, so that's why they get portrayed that way. Their identity becomes narrative driven. Nobody can see who the scapegoat is. It's all based on the scapegoat narrative. Up next, we've got family mobbing. This is what a family will do when scapegoating doesn't work. That's if the scapegoat is trying to protect themselves, standing up for themselves, speaking truth. What it does is the aggression is increased. It is to force capitulation, group bullying. It's open and collected. It's extreme opposition and negativity, excessive criticism, shaming. It's a free-for-all. It's an open roast. And it's a time where everyone else in the family is to prove their loyalty to the narcissist. There's mocking and balking of the scapegoat. And it's just plain dehumanizing because they're not treated like a human. They're not treated like they have their own thoughts, their own feelings, that they even matter. Their intentions are spoken for, and once again, doesn't have to be correct. The goal of the goal of psychological and emotional abuse is power and control. The goal of narcissistic abuse is power and control for the purpose of fueling and protecting the ego and the false self. The false self is their belief that they really are superior and everyone else is beneath them, just not as good ever. Okay? Family scapegoating abuse is for image protection, and it's a temporary emotional relief. The scapegoat is used to keep homeostasis of the family. They get tense. They've got to dump into somebody else. And when that doesn't work, there's family mobbing. They insist upon it. And these are all abusive. And you can get PTSD from all of these. I would say particularly CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, from narcissistic abuse, family scapegoating abuse, and family mobbing, just extremely detrimental. In family scapegoating abuse, it's as though there's one dominant leader and then a second in command. The others are pawns, but they still align with the dominant leader. And then the scapegoat, who could get scapegoated and mobbed, is like a different, lesser game piece altogether, who is considered lower in the hierarchy than the other family members. In a healthy family, what this would look like would be everybody is the same and everyone's on the same level and one team. That's what a healthy family is like. So when you're wondering, am I overreacting? Am I being too sensitive? Am I blowing things out of proportion? Here are some professionals who have written books that hopefully can validate you. Now, my first book I'd like to share with you is called It's Not You, Dr. Ramani. She's fantastic. I highly recommend this book. So let's read a tidbit on page 87. This is about the fallout of narcissistic abuse. So when people experience narcissistic abuse and they've entered the devaluation phase and the relationship isn't what you thought it was, this is the universal experience of people. Rumination, regret, euphoric recall, recollecting the good stuff, trying to figure out what it meant. Helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness, confusion, perfectionism, guilt. And you see yourself in the world lonely. Difficulties with trust, isolation, shame, flashbacks, hypervigilance, hyperarousal, feeling on edge or jumpy, difficulty concentrating, disassociating through numbing, mentally checking out, overworking, engaging in unhealthy behaviors. Disassociating can come in many different ways, and I think it's also related to the rumination where you're just in your head and you're not participating in the world around you. And that's normal. That's a normal response to narcissistic abuse. Your sense of self and responsibility, fear of being alone, self-doubt, self-devaluation, you put yourself down because that inner critic now is kind of tattooed in your head. You don't always need that other person telling you what a terrible failure you are. You can do that on your own. It's conditioning and training. Your sense of responsibility includes self-blame, self-loathing, your emotions. You feel depression, grief, irritability, can have suicidal thoughts, anxiety, apathy, don't care about anything, kind of like emotional numbing, amotivation, don't want to do anything, and hedonita, no joy from doing anything that has been pleasurable in the past. So this inability to experience joy from things that normally would bring you joy. Things you do to manage the relationship: appeasing, reassuring, apologizing, self-monitoring, self-denial. And this can also affect your health with sleep difficulties, physical health issues, particularly autoimmune disorders, migraines, stomach aches, irritable bowel syndrome, self-care deficits, like you're just so consumed with it, or you don't value yourself enough. It's harder to keep up with your doctor appointments. You might forget. It might be harder to have a shower than it is when you're feeling normal. Fatigue and exhaustion, maladaptive coping. This book is called Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed: Help and Hope for Adults in the Family Scapegoat Role. This is by Rebecca C. Mandeville, marriage and family therapist. She also has her own YouTube channel, and I highly recommend her and Dr. Romani both if you want more information. I think they're fantastic, and I can't speak highly enough about either of them. They're just wonderful. So I open this book, page 6. So Rebecca's talking about how when she sees her clients and they make genograms, which are fancy family trees that display details about each person and their relationships with one another. This is what she sees commonly. This is commonly associated in families who scapegoat abuse. Similarly, many of the genograms my clients have done as part of their family systems exploration reveal sudden, unexpected deaths, including suicides, severe or chronic illness, stillbirths, mental illness, including institutionalization of a parent or other close relative, divorce, abandonment, addiction, overt or covert abuse, including abuse of children, missing relatives, emotional cutoffs, and profound financial setbacks and losses. The resulting patterns, behaviors, and family roles that are transmitted from generation to generation due to the underlying anxiety and trauma associated with adverse experiences and events from a matrix of sorts, one that acts like an energetic spiderweb that is seemingly impossible for the child or adult to resist, challenge, or escape from. And remember, that is a trait involved with CPTSD, is not being able to escape. For those who do wake up, there's another reality outside. Once the truth is uncovered, it can't be forgotten about or ignored, and it's really quite destabilizing. The truth can be destabilizing force in a family that depends on false narratives. It is destabilizing for the person to realize what has happened and for all of that truth to come to their awareness. And if the truth is shared with the family, they are too destabilized to accept it. And I have never heard of a scapegoating family debunking and giving up their scapegoat narrative. Like, once a person is scapegoated, that's their family role. What was said about them will never be corrected, no matter how ridiculous or inaccurate it is. Another book I recommend, Believing Me by Ingrid Clayton, PhD. This is a memoir, and rather than read a chapter, I'm going to tell you she's got a couple chapters in here. One is called The Red Face, and the other chapter is called Red Flags. And she speaks about how she just had this toxic shame and constant feelings of inadequacy. And this was in adulthood. She had 4 years with a narcissistic stepdad living with him, and it impacted her life so much that for years she had profound difficulty in relationships, and she would just assume the fawning, people-pleasing role because, as she put it, red flags don't look like red flags when they feel like home. So it affected her relationship patterns. And it took her many years to figure out why she was seemingly automatically finding herself in the same types of abusive relationships. And she did figure it out, and she did move forward, and so can you. And I think this is a great book. It talks about the impact. Now, another book, speaking about the impact of these psychological emotional abuses, is Traumatic Cognitive Dissonance by Dr. Peter Salerno. And I am going to read to you about what traumatic cognitive dissonance is. This is how he describes it. This is what people experience when they are in a narcissistic relationship, whether it be a spouse or a family member, or it could be anybody, but they always start kind and then they switch. And so it disrupts all of your memories because you don't even know what the past means anymore. Everything is tainted and confusing. So on page 2, he writes, traumatic cognitive dissonance. This is what it is. When truth manipulation and other forms of deceit and coercion are experienced on a chronic basis, the result is devastating, disorienting, and bewildering form of trauma, with a very unique indicator that goes far beyond typical trauma and stress-related symptoms. To describe this unique symptom indicator, I've coined the term traumatic cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is simply when what you believe doesn't align with what you're experiencing with reality or even with your own actions. Cognitive refers to thinking, dissonance refers to tension or a clash. So cognitive dissonance in simplistic terms is an internal clash between two cognitions that are inconsistent with each other. It could be something minor. It's disconcerting at the least, paralyzing at the worst. Traumatic cognitive dissonance can be defined as a distinct form of internal conflict that is the direct result of truth manipulation and covert abuse with the context of a relationship with a disordered personality, where the abuser disorients the victim's brain and nervous system with relentless contradictions. The results in contradictory beliefs about yourself, contradictory beliefs about your pathological partner or whoever they are, whatever the relationship is, and contradictory beliefs about the true nature of the relationship dynamic. It can simultaneously activate and maintain what is known as a dorsal vagal shutdown, which is the freeze response in your autonomic nervous system. So you get stuck in the freeze response because the confusion that they could be this person in the beginning and now they're this other person, like a completely separate person, a 180, and they're both people. It is so confusing and destabilizing that your brain gets stuck in the freeze response. And this is, again, involuntary, uncontrollable, unwanted. It's unpleasant. And this is why you can't just get over it, because your nervous system has been overactivated and you're stuck in the freeze response, which is part of the amygdala's job. Most of the people, almost every single case of the people he's worked with, they default to blaming themselves. So that is very characteristic, is self-blame. But it doesn't mean that you are to blame. I hope you feel validated, understood, and not so alone. You aren't the problem because you're experiencing emotional pain. You're not the problem because you have a loss of trust or attachment, or because your nervous system responds correctly when someone opposes you emotionally, psychologically, and threatens your relational safety. You aren't being petty. You're acknowledging abuse and trauma, which is a big deal. You're not holding a grudge. You're holding a safe space for your human feelings and for your nervous system when you're stuck in freeze and you can't help it. You're not being bitter. You're being traumatized. And it takes time to heal that trauma. And because your nervous system is still overactivated, that doesn't mean that you're intentionally choosing to hold resentment against somebody. You're not being mean or unforgiving. You're being giving to yourself. and holding healthy compassion and being wise not to trust another betrayer without change. You're not letting your pain ruin a relationship. And as a matter of fact, if there is pain in a relationship, that should get in the way of the relationship. Abuse does disrupt a relationship. And when it's a pattern, a relationship isn't even possible. It becomes a trauma bond. And that's not the same as a working, healthy relationship. Imagine you touch a stove and you move your hand because you got burned. Are you going to go back and touch the stove again? And are you in the wrong because you didn't go back to the source of pain? No, you're just showing that you've learned. And it's good to learn. The real thing that has damaged the relationship has been the abusive behavior and the complete and total absence of working repair. And that would be an accountability, taking responsibility, a genuine apology, listening to the impact and making a point to understand the receiver's emotions, and making a point to change behavior and prevent abuse and trauma from happening again. When something happens twice, you can expect it to continue to happen. You've learned the pattern. When it's a pattern, you know it's going to happen again. And remember, you don't need somebody else's approval, understanding, or permission to exist, to have your own emotions, your own true experience, your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own actual intentions. You don't need somebody else to agree with any of that for that to be real. You are you and you know you. Here's a journaling tip. If you like to journal, journal what the person said or did, and then after that, journal what the reality was. And that helps you to ground yourself. If someone's rewriting history, write in your journal what actually did happen. If somebody is invalidating and minimizing your emotions, write how you really feel about it, and then get some research done about how other people in the same situation generally tend to feel about the same thing. I hope this helps you grow confident and be grounded in reality and safety. See you next time. Bye.